discuss with you today the male principle. We're living in a changing time right now where some guys are having anxiety because the shifting in gender roles. So let's discuss a little bit about that shift and that change, and really how it could have a very positive effect on us. Men have always been the dominant sex, in theory. But we see that there is now this almost archetypal shift that's taking over. So here, for so long, are men being the dominant gender since the dawn of man, ironically. But there's an uprising now of the feminine energy. Now, eons ago, there was, of course, the cult of woman, the cult of Isis, the cult of Mary, the cult of Ma'at, the cult of Bast. So, in antiquity, women always, of course, had their great devotees, but as time has gone on, the men have become more lordly, as if they own themselves, their women, their land, their world. Now, of course, something's shifting. A balance is occurring. What seems to be taking place right now, whether we want to admit it or not, is some sort of emancipation. Men are starting to disappear in the workforce. It's really pathetic to say this, but in the States, there are actually a lot more men currently in jail than getting college degrees. It's almost some sort of a shift in society where it's more of a bragging right to say you've been through this trial, this school of hard knocks, rather than an actual education. It's kind of scary, and it shouldn't be that way. But I'm convinced, again, because of the changing gender roles and the rise of women's power, which should absolutely be the rise of yin power. It's a necessity. But again, it seems to be causing an anxiety in men where they're becoming lost in their consciousness, in their spirituality. They're losing touch with themselves. And that's got to stop. I've always been ahead of myself. I've always felt I'm sort of a masculine feminist at heart. I've always put women on a pedestal. Like most of my guy friends, I love women, and I know we're returning to the yin and yang principle, the balance of the powers, and it's the way it's supposed to be. But I remember years ago when I first started having problems with my hip, and we're talking a long time ago when I was just a kid lecturing in halls, and I would be bombarded with questions from the audience or unsolicited reportage. And I remember one person in the audience raised their hand and said, the reason you have problems with your hip is because your right hip is because you're not accessing your feminine side. And I had to make a joke about it, and I said to this individual, dude, no one could be accessing their feminine side more than I do. I mean, it's a wonder I'm not standing in front of you in a strapless evening gown. That's how much I'm in tune with my feminine energy. So I turned it into a kind of something rather jocular, but it was rather funny hearing that, because you can fault a person for a lot of things, but that's one thing you can't say about me is I'm not in tune with my feminine energy. I've always been ahead of my time in that respect. I've always embraced the balance, and frankly, it's afforded me a wonderful life. You're thrown into this world sometimes with its tenes and its morals or its schematic, but it's up to you as a guy to re-examine your own masculinity. I've traveled around the world, and one thing I've noticed is, as an example, I've been in Lithuania when beautiful women have walked down the block in very short skirts, beautifully made up, gorgeous hair, and they're knockouts when they walk down the street. But the thing that really strikes me is there has never been an instant where a guy has turned his head and wolf-called her down like she's some kind of piece of rump roast or chop meat. However, coming right back to the States though, I am frankly appalled at how many women, whether they're dressing up or even not, whether they're trying to attract a man's energy or not, maybe they're trying to attract a woman's energy, maybe they're just trying to look good in their outfit, maybe sexuality has nothing to do with it at all, attracting some dude. But the point is though, I can't tell you how many guys I've seen turn their head what appears to be like an owl in a 360-degree turn while they're driving a vehicle, to the point where an accident will occur. They'll go up a sidewalk, they'll almost hit a stop sign, they'll fall off their bike, they'll trip on the sidewalk. It's very peculiar to the States, because I haven't seen it necessarily so overtly in other countries. Frankly, I find it sickening. And most women, 90% of them I find, are not interested at all in this behavior. It turns them off. But you know, I actually feel sorry though for the women that are turned on by that, or think that's the male, that's the guy you want. That's awful. That's pathetic. You don't want that. You know, I have a megaton of male friends, and I have had lots of dude friends over the course of many decades, and they are actually very spiritually inclined. They're good guys. There's a lot of them out there. So I would want the gals that are seeing this video not to just chalk guys off nowadays, which seems so easy to do, and just say that they're useless, they're hopeless, they're interested in their cars or the size of whatever, or who knows what. They're not all like that. There are plenty of guys I read, and now more than ever, my clientele is 50% men, easily, because they're searching with the changing gender roles, where women are working and women are the breadwinners, women are making more money, and men are redefining themselves like John Lennon did way back when. Maybe he was one of the forefront of being a house husband or just wanting to raise a child. These things are now, men are trying to navigate the new sense of themselves and their spirituality. You know, I remember when I was younger, and maybe because of society, I don't know, but I had, I wasn't much of a hugger or a toucher. I really didn't like so much that, I was uncomfortable at first with that kind of interaction between myself and other people. Kind of kept people a little bit more at bay. But as the years have gone on, I've almost gone into a complete different polarity, where I hug my clientele before they leave. I hug my uncles and my cousins and my family. Maybe Reiki has even given me that edge to want to touch or put my hands even near people and feel that energy. But you know, what I find very interesting is, over the decades now that I've hugged my guy friends, for the most part, I'd say 99% of them are so soothed by that energy. Just the fact that another guy would just give you a hug before you go. And it's not some homophobic vibe that gets into the air. And not that there's anything wrong with homosexuality, it's just that that doesn't get in the way. There's not a vibe like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything other than brotherly love or heart-to-heart energy. And I find sometimes, if I even forget when one of my clients, a repeat client, leaves, and I'll do that, there's like, well, where's my hug? It's like so funny that we're men are really starting to open up to what they've always should have been opened up to, which is just that unconditional love for each other as brothers. So, you know, the more that we go through this process of healing ourselves and our identity and being very comfortable with our masculinity, I had a lot more paintings that I wanted to put here today. Like, you got my painting of Pan, or you got my beautiful painting of the dark-skinned gentleman I call the Pisces man from my divination deck. I had a lot more pieces I want to put out that were possibly even a little bit more risque, but at the same time, you know, even I feel, though, restricted about, you know, what are people gonna say or think. And, you know, ultimately, though, what you gotta do is, you've gotta be true to your own essence. And my own essence is that I understand the yin and yang vibrational fields. They are both balanced and worthy of blending together. May they always do so. So, while women are recovering their archetypes, their myths, and their stories, which they certainly should, men now have an opportunity to assist that vibrational field, to be very much now an equal part of it, to embrace the new reality, and by doing so, channel a positive energy into this brand new balanced age. So, there's something to look forward to. It's going to be a beautiful balance. So the days of the antiquity now have brought us to this modern era where the god and the goddess now sit side by side, and it's a beautiful thing. And allow that energy to be a part of you internally as well. Speaking of all of this beautiful yang male energy, let's see what the divination deck does in its response to such things. Okay, so let's see what the vibrations have to say. So, I don't know, I got a vibrational sense of the 5 again. Air, earth, fire, water, ether. Let's see what the vibrations have to say. The energies that begin the vibe say this. Again, I feel 5 because it's a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. It's the human body, male or female. The vibes say this. Number 1. Okay. It's an interesting vibe I have. Interesting mantra. It says on it, happily ever after. And ultimately, that's a good way for the story to end. Not that the story has to specifically end right now, but maybe it's suggesting the new chapter, or the new energy, or who knows, maybe just the new book that has to be written. So let this chapter of our history end with happily ever after. But let's see how we get there. So the grand finale started the vibe. It's kind of mysterious. Let's see what gets us there. Vibrational field number 2 says this. We're linear, but maybe we're going backwards. Number 2 says this. Okay, it's a vibrational field of a beautiful woman. Oh yeah. So, it's a gorgeous energy, but it's interesting. It's based on a movie, Bell, Book and Candle from 1958. It's a movie that had a lot to do with love. But it's interesting, because right around that time, 58, 59, 60, the age of Aquarius, the very dawning of it, begins. And all of a sudden now, the Beatles emerge with their girl hair. And after that comes David Bowie and the glam rock, which chicks dig. But the whole notion, though, was this was sort of the end of an era. Gone were the men with the ties and the fedora, and men had to be a certain way or else. But rather, things started to shift, even in this movie. There was witchcraft in this movie, but there were male and female witches, which is kind of unique. So the end of the 50s were ushering in this new era. I'm delighted to see it portray itself in this divination read. Okay? Let's take a look at what number 3 has to say. Very interesting that it's suggesting the time frame. Yeah, of course. Back in the old days, men wore plumage, and men wore wigs, and men powdered whatever, and they looked a certain way too. I mean, this is not really a new story. But in our lifetimes, or our parents, or our grandparents, this was this is a new conception. Let's take a look at what number 3 has to say. The vibes say this. This is not an easy vibe. Now, granted, every vibe we've gotten so far is Danielesque, it's not tarot. But this one is pretty, I don't know if I should say painful, but it works on a very subconscious level. It says on it, What are the things that you are mourning? What are you not getting over? You must come to the realization that everything is in transition. Joy and pain. It's time to have a new perception of what eternity is. That's why I did this video today, to explain exactly that. You don't have to sit up in bed and be troubled by this. If anything, you should feel blessed that you're living in an age where balance will return. Okay? Number 4 out of 5 vibrational fields. Say this. It's funny because someone just asked me about, my mother-in-law just asked me about this 5 this morning. It was part of her puzzle. She said, Daniel, what is the 6 of, starts with a W? So of course, you can't get just a simple answer out of me. I said, it's the 6 of Wands, it's ruled by the Lord of Victory, it's ruled by Jupiter and Leo, it represents goals that are reached, negotiations that proceed, and problems that are overcome. However, it's interesting. I was waffling about this video today. I really wanted to discuss the upcoming Leonine energies. I'm even wearing my goddess necklace that I've worn since I was a kid. I used to wear silver shekmets all the time. My wife recently got me a beautiful golden one. I'm a little bit more attracted now to these gold shades. But Leo is coming. Interesting that you think of Leo the lion, but you also have to think in terms of Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess. She's the one who fearlessly protects her children and those that she loves. So the one tarot card we get is the one my mother-in-law asked because it was part of her puzzle today. What is the 6 of whatever? It's the 6 of Wands, and it's the Lord of Victory. Bearing in mind, if we're all changing our dynamic as far as our gender roles are concerned, you cannot have a victory unless you've had a struggle. And the 5th vibrational field says this. Okay. Osiris. I had him on my notes today. I was going to bring him up and put a line through it. What I've learned with Osiris is when I did my green video this winter, Osiris does not allow me to dismiss him. Let's explain. The myth of Osiris goes something like this. He was cut up into millions of pieces by the dark energies of the world, maybe represented by his brother Set. But the notion was, then, not only was that bad enough, but every piece was tossed into the wind. It was the job of his love, Isis, to find every piece of Osiris and put him back together again. It is suggested his heart was never found, or maybe something else was never found, depends on what you read. So what Isis did is, she rebuilt that part in him, and with her arms as wings, she fanned that part of him back to life. She resuscitated Osiris, and he became the beautiful god of the underworld that ushers the Ka, the Ba, or the spirits into the heavenly realms. So, the god is the first resurrected god, associated very much with, let's say, Christ consciousness. But he never could have done this without the love of Isis. Once again, it shows that we need each other. And in this modern world, perhaps what we're doing is we're also discovering that beautiful balance within each one of us. We are all men. We are all women. We are the best of both. This is an exciting new age. Access the very best of it. Be the best that you can be.